Inside a crumbling warehouse, a drug gang worked like a machine. No shouting, no wasted movement, just sharp blades slicing plastic, powder weighed to the gram, packets sealed fast. This was no backstreet operation. It was a full-scale drug distribution hub, locked down tight with armed guards watching every move. Then, without warning, the steel door slammed open. A masked figure in black stormed in, silent, fast, ruthless. What followed was pure destruction. He struck with expert force, elbows breaking jaws, arms twisted in combat holds, strikes landed with deadly aim. One by one, the guards dropped. Some tried to resist, none stood a chance. He moved like he'd done this 100 times before, trained, precise, unstoppable. Minutes later, the place was wrecked, the guards broken. The man seized a heavy duffel bag packed with drugs and made for the exit. But just as he reached the door, sirens, dozens of them. Police vehicles boxed in the warehouse, lights flashing, rifles raised. Every path was sealed. The escape was over. Trapped with no escape, he raised his hands and gave up. Officers closed in fast, locked him in cuffs, and dragged him to a waiting police van. The raid was over. But for the masked man, this was only the beginning. At the station, his identity finally came to light. Terry Savage, a former U.S. Marine sergeant. Not a career criminal, but a decorated soldier. A combat veteran from Afghanistan, honored for bravery and frontline service. But after the war, everything changed. Civilian life offered no purpose, no support. Terry drifted, broken by trauma and forgotten by the country he once served. That violent raid wasn't just theft, it was a message, a strike against the very system that left him behind. After his arrest, he was placed alone in an interrogation room, hands still cuffed. Moments later, Commissioner Harvey walked in and sat across from him. There were no greetings, only disbelief. A top officer now face-to-face with a fallen hero, trying to understand how a man who once served with honor had ended up here. The question struck deep. Terry, tense and bitter, laid it all out. Life after the military was nothing like what he'd been promised. No support, no steady job, no real help. His years of service meant nothing in the world outside. Employers saw his skills as useless, his medals didn't pay the bills. He had tried to survive. He sent out applications, chased every opportunity, but doors kept closing. Or worse, opened only to offer scraps. With no income, no stability, and no future in sight, he cracked. Violence was all he knew, the only thing that still made sense. In his mind, the real criminal wasn't him, it was the system that forgot him the moment he stepped off the battlefield. Commissioner Harvey listened, then shifted the tone. This wasn't just an interrogation, it was a setup for something bigger. Harvey had an offer. Terry would still serve time, but on one condition. He would go in as an undercover agent inside the prison system. The mission: expose the truth about the prison's warden, a man long suspected of running the place like a personal empire. The list of accusations was serious: corruption, abuse, drug smuggling, even human rights violations. But without proof, no action could be taken. That's where Terry came in. However, the prison wasn't just any lockup. It was a fortress. Surveillance everywhere, guards loyal to the warden, and layers of protection built by deep ties to the mafia and crooked officials. Every outside attempt to investigate had failed. That's why Harvey needed someone inside, someone like Terry. Terry was given a choice: do hard time like everyone else, or take the mission. If he succeeded, Harvey promised a clean record, early release, and a shot at a real job.
And I will set you free. You hear me? Free. Time served.
But there was more at stake. Harvey knew about Terry's daughter. She was critically ill, and her treatment came with a price tag he couldn't afford. Time was running out. For Terry, nothing mattered more than saving her. He had fought to stay clean, worked every job he could find, but it was never enough. That's what pushed him over the edge. The warehouse raid wasn't about greed, it was desperation. He broke the law not for profit, but to keep his daughter alive. Every move he made was for her. After thinking it through, Terry accepted the mission. This was more than a deal, it was his shot at redemption, a way to clear his name, reclaim his future, and finally give his daughter the life she deserved. Harvey gave him 10 days. In that time, Terry had to dig deep, uncover the truth about the warden, and collect solid evidence, enough to bring down a corrupt empire from the inside. With the agreement in place, Terry was moved to a high-security prison under a new name. On paper, he was just another convict, but in reality, he was on a covert mission, sent behind bars to take down the system. Following the plan, Terry Savage was loaded onto a prison transport with other inmates. The convoy was locked down tight, guarded on all sides, heading straight for one of the toughest facilities in the region. When they arrived, the new inmates were herded into the main yard. There, two senior officers waited. Lieutenant Killian, known for his brutal methods, and Roy, his second-in-command, quieter, but with the same cold stare. Killian didn't waste time. In a cold, direct briefing, he laid out the rules. Follow the warden's orders without question. Disobedience meant pain. No warnings, no second chances. After the warning, each inmate was called up for a mandatory procedure. One by one, they were injected with a tracking chip at the base of the neck. This device monitored every move in real time, feeding data straight to the warden's control center. No one was exempt. Terry went through it just like the rest, tagged, logged, and marched to his cell. The cell was bare and tight, offering little more than a metal bed and concrete walls. Privacy didn't exist here. Now cut off from the outside world, Terry had fully stepped into his new identity. He was officially inside. The mission was on. Every move from here had to count. Inside the cell, Terry quickly started observing. This place wasn't just full of inmates. It held men tied to murder, cartels, and organized crime. One wrong move could be deadly. While checking his cell, Terry spotted something strange. An old book placed neatly on his bed. It looked harmless, but inside the pages had been carved out, hiding a small phone tucked deep within. It was no accident. Commissioner Harvey had planted it. The device was Terry's lifeline, a way to send secret updates on illegal activity, corruption, or violence inside the prison. But it came with serious risk. If anyone found it, guard or inmate, he'd be exposed and likely killed. The phone could only be used when the place was absolutely clear. That was the moment it became clear. This wasn't just a mission. It was a war inside a cage, a war against power, control, and corruption. So, welcome to the system. Later, in the crowded dining hall, Terry moved carefully, carrying his meal tray. He scanned the room, alert but calm. As he passed between tables, a prisoner named Chris intentionally blocked his path and knocked the tray from his hands. Food hit the floor. The room froze. Every eye turned. Chris stood tall, clearly trying to provoke him. He demanded Terry kneel and clean up the mess, a public attempt to break him. But Terry didn't move. He stayed still, his face steady, his body controlled. He didn't fight, but he didn't back down either. It was a quiet stand, one that sent a message without a single word. The next day during yard time, Terry moved through the crowd of inmates. Some lifted weights, others talked in tight groups. Most kept their eyes open, reading the room. Terry stood near the edge, watching quietly, alone but alert. That's when John approached. He wasn't just another prisoner. He was a gang leader, well-known, respected, and dangerous, with loyal men scattered across the yard. At that moment, John made a direct offer. Join his crew. In here, survival wasn't about toughness alone. It was about who had your back. His gang ran protection, controlled space, and kept their people safe. Most inmates knew it. Many depended on it. But Terry refused. He made it clear. He wasn't looking for allies. He'd handle things on his own. Hours later, Terry was in the laundry room, a dim, quiet space where inmates rotated through chores. No guards, no noise, just shadows and steam. Then it happened. A group of inmates closed in on John, weapons in hand, movement tight. It was a coordinated hit, but they had picked the wrong man. John didn't panic. He fought back fast and hard. His strikes were brutal, controlled, and exact. One by one, the attackers dropped. He showed no fear, no mercy. Terry stood back and watched. He didn't step in. He didn't move. He was there only to observe. Later that night, as Terry returned to his cell, he was ambushed. Chris and his crew rushed in, using the tight quarters to trap him. They struck from all sides. Terry fought hard, but the numbers weren't on his side. The beating escalated fast. Then, out of nowhere, another inmate burst in and fought off the attackers. The clash grew loud, violent, enough to bring the guards running. Officers swarmed in and broke up the fight. No questions asked. Everyone involved, including Terry, was sent straight to solitary. One cell each, no contact, no light, just isolation. The next day, Chris and Terry were pulled from confinement and escorted under heavy guard. Their destination, the warden's office. Lieutenant Killian led the way. Inside the front chamber, punishment was swift. Warden Lucas delivered it himself. Chris had attacked a new inmate without clearance, a serious offense. His penalty, a direct stun to the body. Chris absorbed it without a word. Lucas stayed calm, treating the punishment as routine, a warning. Afterward, Terry was brought in alone. The tone shifted. Lucas spoke in a controlled, almost polite manner. He acknowledged the attack and offered a formal apology. Then he invited Terry to sit. Warden Lucas made his interest clear. He knew about Terry's background, former Marine combat veteran. In his eyes, that kind of training had value. He revealed something few outsiders knew, a secret fight circuit inside the prison, known only as the dungeon. Then came the offer. If Terry agreed to fight, Lucas would make arrangements for an early release, freedom, and a chance to return to his daughter. No more details, just a uniform handed over without delay. Terry would be moved to a new cell, this time with a roommate. A female guard, Maria, led him through the halls. When the cell door opened, Terry was hit with surprise. His new cellmate was Bones, the same inmate who had saved him during the ambush. Inside the cell, Terry wondered why Bones had helped him and how he had become such a skilled fighter. Bones didn't say much. His father had been a martial arts expert. He'd grown up in harsh conditions, trained in brutal no-rules combat. He warned Terry the dungeon was worse than anything he'd seen. Still, Bones offered to help him survive if the time came. Later that night, Terry asked to use the restroom. There, he reached for the hidden book. Inside, the phone was still safe. He sent out his first report to Harvey. The dungeon was real, and Warden Lucas was running it. The next day, Bones brought Terry to the prison gym. There, the real work began. Bones pushed him through hard combat training, fast strikes, tight defenses, moves designed for survival. As they trained, Bones laid out the truth. The fights weren't just for sport. They were part of a power game. Inside the prison, criminal groups ran an underground economy. Each faction had its own fighters, and the battles were used to settle scores, gain influence, and control the flow of money and fear. At the top of it all was John, the same inmate who once approached Terry. He wasn't just a gang leader. He was the current champion of the dungeon, the undefeated fighter known as the top dog. Bones warned, if Terry wanted to last, he'd need more than skill. The whole system would be watching, and the pressure would be relentless. After days inside, Terry learned the rule that controlled everything. Every Friday night, selected inmates were chosen to fight. The matches were secret, the audience was handpicked, and Warden Lucas watched every second. That night, Terry's name appeared on the list. He had no way out. He suited up in the fighter's uniform Lucas had given him. Then, under heavy guard, Killian and Maria came for him. With Bones walking beside him, they led him down into the prison's hidden battleground, the dungeon. When they reached the underground chamber, Terry saw it for himself, the dungeon. A wide, dark arena surrounded by thick iron fencing. The place was packed with inmates, shouting, betting, hungry for violence. Above them all sat Warden Lucas, watching from a high seat that looked more like a throne. Everything was running just the way he wanted. As Terry stepped in, Lucas declared the only rule that mattered: no limits, no breaks, no referees. The last one standing wins. Every fight was streamed live across the prison, showing on screens in every block. But it didn't stop there. Lucas sold the footage online, turning bloodshed into profit, reaching far beyond the prison walls. Terry arrived just as a match was in full swing, two mafia-backed fighters going head-to-head. One of them was John, also known as the dungeon's undefeated champion. He made quick work of his opponent, proving again why he was the top dog. Then it was Terry's turn. His first opponent, El Papiro, a brutal fighter tied to the Mexican mafia. The opening round went badly. Terry was stiff, tense, and took hard hits. El Papiro stayed in control, landing clean shots. But in the second round, Terry adjusted. Focus locked in. His strikes became sharper, quicker. He landed blow after blow, finally knocking El Papiro to the ground with a powerful finish. Welcome to the The crowd exploded in cheers. Above it all, Lucas nodded, clearly impressed. After the fight, John was called to Lucas's office for his reward. As promised, he was allowed to ask for anything. He didn't hesitate. He wanted out. His release, just like Lucas had once offered. But the warden denied it. One more match, Lucas said. Just one more. Furious, John didn't back down. He warned Lucas that breaking a promise would come at a price. If the deal was off, he and his crew would turn the prison upside down. The threat was clear. A riot was on the table. Tension between the two men rose fast. Meanwhile, the scene shifted to the visitation room. Terry sat across from Jeanette, a sharp attorney known for defending veterans who'd fallen through the cracks. She had studied his case closely. In her eyes, Terry wasn't a criminal. He was a desperate father, pushed to the edge by his daughter's medical crisis. She believed he had a strong chance to appeal. Jeanette offered to represent him for free, confident she could fight for his release through the courts, but Terry turned her down. He couldn't tell her why, but the real reason was clear. He was deep in an undercover mission. Walking out now would blow everything Commissioner Harvey had set in motion. Back in the dining hall, Terry sat quietly with Bones, eating and scanning the room. The calm didn't last. John appeared standing in front of them with a cold glare. He wasn't happy. Terry's sudden rise in the dungeon was a problem. It challenged John's hold on power, and he wasn't going to let it slide. John issued a direct threat: stay in your lane or face the consequences. If Terry kept pushing forward, there would be a price inside the arena and out. Not long after, Terry returned to the dungeon. This time, his opponent was Dragon, a flashy fighter from an Asian mafia group. Dragon entered with confidence, showing off kung fu techniques to win over the crowd. But the fight didn't go as expected. The bell rang, and within seconds, Terry landed a single, crushing punch. Dragon dropped instantly. The fight was over. One hit. Total silence, then an explosion of shock from the crowd. The fast win sent a clear message, and John didn't like it. For the first time, he felt real pressure. Terry wasn't just another challenger. He was a threat. A serious one. Back in the cell, Bones opened up. He shared why he was locked up. He had killed the man who hurt his younger sister. Terry listened quietly, showing respect. He told Bones he had done the right thing. Bones returned the sentiment, saying Terry was more than just a fighter. He was a father worth admiring. The next day, while Terry was working in the prison labor yard, John's gang struck. They ambushed him from behind, fast, violent, planned. Maria, the guard who often kept watch over Terry, saw what was happening and jumped in. But in the chaos, one of the attackers stabbed her. Reinforcements arrived just in time to stop the assault and save Maria, but the damage was done. Terry was furious. Without waiting, he marched straight to Warden Lucas. He demanded a fight, him versus John. Lucas pushed back, saying Terry wasn't ready. But Terry wouldn't back off. He wanted the match, now. At the same time, John exploded with anger when he heard about the ambush. He claimed he never gave the order. To him, the attack crossed a line. It broke his personal code and damaged his reputation as a fighter. After the stabbing of Maria, Warden Lucas acted fast. He summoned John's crew to the dungeon. In front of guards and selected inmates, Lucas made an example of them. Without warning, he executed 2 of John's men on the spot, a brutal reminder of who truly controlled the prison. Then, he gave John a clear warning: control your crew or face the same consequences. With order restored, Lucas gave the green light. The fight between Terry and John was officially on. It would be the main event, the match that would decide who ruled the dungeon. In the days before the fight, Terry pushed his body to the limit. He trained non-stop, shadowboxing, rapid strikes, and reflex drills. Bones guided him through every step, sharpening his defense, reaction time, and counterattacks. They had no fancy gear, just sandbags, cold walls, and their own strength. During a brief break, Terry managed to send another secret update to Commissioner Harvey using the hidden phone. In it, he exposed the full scope of what was happening: illegal fights, abuse of power, and executions ordered by Lucas. Then the night arrived. The dungeon was packed. The crowd roared. Terry and John stood face to face, both ready for war. As the first round began, Terry came out strong, fast punches, hard body shots, and non-stop pressure. John struggled to keep up. Terry's speed, technique, and endurance gave him the upper hand. In the second round, John came back with force. He landed hard hits, sharp blows to Terry's face and gut. But Terry stayed focused, reading every move, striking back with calm, brutal accuracy. Midway through the round, Terry saw an opening. He fired off a clean combo, ending with a crushing uppercut to the chin. John hit the ground hard. He didn't get back up. The referee stopped the fight. It was over. Terry had done it. The dungeon erupted. Cheers shook the walls. There was no more doubt. Terry was now the top dog. The undisputed champion of the underground prison circuit. Back in the dining hall, everything had changed. Inmates who once challenged or ignored him now stepped aside. Some even offered him food. No words were needed, just nods of respect. Terry had earned his place at the top. That night, Warden Lucas called him in. He was pleased, the fight had gone viral, and the profits were massive. As a reward, Lucas made Terry his right-hand man, giving him authority over the inmate population. But it didn't stop there. Lucas also invited him into the prison's secret drug trade. With access to the operation, Terry quietly collected drug samples, free element for later. Then, Lucas led him to a cold room. Inside were the bodies of the 2 gang members he had executed earlier. He claimed it was to protect Terry. But to Terry, the message was clear. This wasn't protection. It was proof of how far Lucas would go, and a clear sign of the crimes happening under his watch. Despite everything Lucas offered, Terry didn't waver. He turned it all down. The only thing he wanted was what had been promised, his freedom, so he could return to his daughter. After rejecting the offer, Terry was taken to a private room. Waiting inside was someone unexpected, Harvey, the man who had assigned him the mission. That's when the truth hit. It had all been a setup. Harvey and Lucas were in it together. They ran the prison's illegal operations side by side, including the drug trade. They had used Terry's skills and background to expand their control, never intending to let him go. Terry was furious, betrayed by the very system he once believed in, but still, he refused to join their operation. Then Lucas raised the stakes. Bones had been taken hostage. If Terry didn't cooperate, his friend would be killed. With no other option, Terry agreed, for now. But what Lucas and Harvey didn't know was that Terry had already set a plan in motion. He and Bones had quietly started organizing the inmates. Most were already fed up with the corruption and abuse. Terry gave them a cause. Behind the scenes, he built a network, secret messages, smuggled plans, and silent coordination across cell blocks. A full-scale uprising was coming, and it was moving fast. For legal support, Terry reached out to Jeanette, the lawyer who had once offered to help. This time, he gave her everything. Recordings, notes, drug samples, solid proof of the crimes happening inside the prison. Harvey, too confident in his control, never realized the evidence had slipped through his fingers. Still trying to hold power, Lucas made a desperate move. He arranged one last fight, his attempt to crush Terry's growing influence. He brought in Kaka, a savage, undefeated fighter from another facility. This was Lucas's final play to humiliate Terry in front of the entire prison. The fight took place in the dungeon. The crowd packed in, waiting. In round 1, Kaka dominated. His attacks were brutal and relentless, knocking Terry to the floor again and again. But by round 2, Terry adapted. He read Kaka's rhythm, picked up on his patterns, and turned the match around. With sharp, focused strikes, he broke through and delivered a clean knockout. Kaka was down. Terry had won again, and his leadership was now undeniable. Right after the match, Terry gave the signal. Inmates across the dungeon launched the plan. Chaos broke out. They overwhelmed guards, destroyed the infrastructure, and seized control of the underground. Lucas's armed enforcers rushed in to stop the revolt, but it was too late. The prisoners outnumbered them, and the riot had already taken full control. The uprising was in motion, and there was no stopping it. Amid the chaos, Lucas made a run for it, slipping through a hidden exit near the back of the prison. But Terry was ready. He chased him down, cornering him in a tight corridor near the control room. Lucas pulled a gun and fired at close range, but the bullet didn't land. Terry was wearing a vest, the same kind Lucas had issued to dungeon fighters. It saved his life. Terry quickly disarmed him and took him down. Moments later, a special police unit stormed in. Jeanette had submitted the full report and all the evidence, forcing the authorities to act fast. Lucas and his men were arrested on the spot. The riot was shut down, and the prison was locked back under control. Days later, Terry stood in court beside Jeanette. She brought good news. The government had granted him a full pardon. For exposing the corruption, drug trade, and abuse inside the prison, Terry was now a free man. More than that, the state agreed to pay for his daughter's medical care in full until she recovered. Before leaving for good, Terry returned to his cell one last time. He thanked Bones for standing by him and being a true friend. Then, as he walked out of the block, every inmate stood and cheered. He didn't just win a fight, he earned their respect. Meanwhile, Lucas sat alone in a high-security isolation cell. No power, no control, just silence. Dressed in a prison uniform, hands shaking, he stared into the dark. Everything was gone. Now, he would answer for it all. The story ends. So the moral of the story is, when job hunting doesn't work out, Consider extreme undercover missions inside corrupt prisons. It's basically the same thing, just with more punching.